Dear colleagues, I'm really sorry I was not able to really come to Denver for this 4th World Congress of Existential Therapy. But I thought maybe I can send a video recording of my presentation in the hope that maybe there is something to contribute to the topic of authenticity and generally to our stance in the world in this very difficult moment in time. I must admit that I originally had a lot of hesitation and doubt about coming to the US at this point in time. But talking with friends, colleagues, I thought that exactly because of this point in time, I should come. Of course, fate has many turns. So although I had decided to come, I'm finally unable to travel, but still hoping that some thoughts about our stance towards authority and the way things are being dealt with is going to be interesting to present. So, as you probably already know, I'm going to present Antigone. It is projected as a full screen, and her authentic defiance. So let me say a few things about the play. Antigone was written by Sophocles around 441 BC, during the height of classical Greek drama in Athens. It was first performed at the festival of Dionysia, where Sophocles is believed to have won the first prize. Antigone is about the conflict between personal conscience and state law. After a civil war in Thebes, King Creon declares that Eteocles, who defended the city, will be honored with burial, while his brother, Polynices, considered a traitor, must remain unburied. Their sister, Antigone, believes divine law requires that all people receive burial rites, so she secretly buries Polynices despite Creon's order. When Antigone is caught, Creon sentences her to death, even though she is engaged to his son, Haemon, and Haemon pleads for mercy to his father, but Creon refuses, and Antigone is sealed inside a tomb where she takes her own life. Haemon, devastated, also dies, and Creon's wife, Eurydice, kills herself in grief. By the end of the play, Creon realizes that his pride and stubbornness have destroyed his family. The play explores themes of loyalty, justice, pride, fate, and the tension between human law and moral duty. One of the reasons I chose Antigone was because I know that Heidegger considered her as one of the examples of authenticity. And we will really see why probably he thought so. But let me say a few things about Antigone and her background. Antigone comes from the royal family of Thebes, a family that is really marked by tragedy and a curse. And she is the daughter of Oedipus, that you probably all know from Freud and the Oedipal conflict. The former king of Thebes, and Iocaste, who was both his mother and wife. Of course, to make a parenthesis, we know that Oedipus was unknowingly fulfilling a prophecy that he would kill his father and marry his mother. But this brought a lot of shame, of course, and suffering upon the family. And he ended up plugging his eyes out. And Iocaste was also killed herself. Of course, Freud used the myth a little differently, talking about the rivalry between father and son, although what we know is that Laius, the king of Thebes, received an oracle saying, your son that was just born will kill you and marry your wife. So it's the father that sends Oedipus to be killed. And the servants that take him are sorry of the little baby. And instead of killing him, they give him for adoption. So Oedipus grows up really without knowing who his father is. And originally, I think what we know is that Freud had in his mind that this rivalry really begins from the father, from the parents. But it was already too much to talk about sexuality, let alone to talk about childhood abuse. So he really talked about the impulses of children and the desire of the child towards the mother, instead of how the original myth is all about. So Antigone has this heritage, and she has three siblings. Ismene, who is a cautious and obedient sister, as we will see, and Theocles, her brother, who defended Thebes, took the throne after Oedipus and was the king, but his brother Polynices attacked Thebes to claim the throne, and they both died. So finally, Creon, their uncle, got the throne. So after Oedipus left Thebes, Theocles and Polynices fought each other for power, and both died in battle. And their uncle Creon became king. And the suffering, of course, and conflicts within this family form the background of the whole tragedy of Antigone. So Sophocles' play dramatizes really the clash between divine law and human authority, yet its enduring power lies in how it anticipates existentialist themes of authenticity, of freedom, and of course of moral courage that I'm going to also discuss, because I think it is essential for freedom and for authenticity. Antigone's choice to bury her brother can reveal really two dimensions of existential authenticity. We could say that there is the more Kierkegaardian view of a single individual acting in faith before God, and the more Sartrean view of a person that is embracing radical freedom and responsibility and acts out their own free will. Antigone refuses to compromise, and her refusal illustrates the paradox of moral courage, in which, of course, includes the idea of integrity, of deep values, of love and legacy that all come together in the price of really isolation, loss, and even personal destruction, as we will see. Her stance also foregrounds the tragic interplay of fate and free will, bound by her cursed lineage, yet defined by her conscious choices. By reading Antigone as an existential archetype, this presentation really argues that her tragedy is illuminating the universal struggle to live authentically in the face of external authority and uncertainty and mortality. So I chose this play, as I said, in order to illuminate how maybe we in our days can all become a little bit of an Antigone, standing up in these difficult times towards authority. The play was staged last year all over Greece in many ancient theaters, and I was very lucky to see the play in the ancient theater of Olympia. And I was immediately captivated, and I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about Antigone, but maybe I could even also show a little part of the play, because it was so nicely staged. And I was very fortunate because actress that was playing Antigone, who is an upcoming young actress in Greece, is Lena Papaligoura, and she is the niece of my best friend. So I asked her if she could give me a recording of the play, and she was very kind to give me the two scenes I asked her for. And from those two scenes, I chose just a small part, so that, because of time. So I'm going to show you two scenes from the play. The one is at the beginning of the play, as it starts, and is her dialogue with her sister, Ismini. And then there is, towards the end, after Creon has condemned her to death, a monologue that is talking, and I have also chosen a small part to show you. So let's see the video.
Ισμήνη μου, μονάκριβη αδερφή μου. Άραγε, υπάρχει συμφορά από τις τόσες που μας άφησε κληρονομιά ο πατέρας, που ο Δίας να μην έστειλε ακόμα στη ζωή μας. Τίποτε πια δεν έμεινε. Κανένας πόνος, καμιά καταστροφή, καμιά ντροπή, καμιά ατίμωση που να μην έχω δει εγώ μες στα δικά σου βάσανα και τα δικά μου. Και τώρα, τι είναι πάλι αυτή η απόφαση του Κρέοντα? Άκουσες? Ποια πράξη εχθρική, ποια προσβολή μας ετοιμάζει?
Όχι, Αντιγόνη. Τίποτε δεν άκουσα. Τίποτε από τη στιγμή που χάσαμε τα αδέλφια μας. Τα αδέλφια μας που σφάχτηκαν ο ένας από το χέρι του άλλου. Μέσα στη νύχτα χάθηκε και σκόρπισε ο στρατός του Άργους. Αυτό μόναχα ξέρω. Τίποτα άλλο.
Το ξέρα. Γι' αυτό σε καλέσα εδώ μόνη. Να σου μιλήσω.
Τι συμβαίνει?
Ο Κρέον αποφάσισε να θάψει μόνο τον έναν από τους δυο μας αδερφούς. Τον άλλον τον αφήνει άταφο. Τον ατιμάζει. Τον ετεοκλεί. Διέταξε να τον θάψουν με όλες τις τιμές που αρμόζουν στους νεκρούς του κάτω κόσμου. Όμως το άψυχο κορμί του Πολυνίκη έμαθα πως ετοιμάζει διαταγή προς όλους τους πολίτες. Κανείς να μην το θάψει, ούτε κανείς να το θρηνήσει, να μείνει άκλαυτο και άταφο, γλυκός θησαυρός για τα όρνεα που ψάχνουν λιμασμένα για τροφή. Αυτά ο καλός μας θείος διέταξε, για σένα και για μένα. Ναι, και για μένα. Και έρχεται τώρα εδώ να τα διακηρύξει για να τα μάθουν όλοι. Και όποιον τολμήσει να παραβεί την εντολή του, τον περιμένει θάνατος. Ισμήνη μου, ήρθε η στιγμή να αποδείξεις αν είσαι αντάξια της γενιάς σου.
Τι σου περνάει από το μυαλό? Τι μου ζητάς να κάνω?
Σκέψου αν θα με βοηθήσεις.
Σε τι? Σε ποια πράξη παράτολμη?
Σκέψου αν θα σηκώσεις μαζί μου τον νεκρό.
Σκέφτεσαι να τον θάψεις, να παραβείς τη διαταγή?
Τον αδελφό μου και δικό σου αδελφό, έστω και μόνη, ναι, θα τον θάψω.
Τρελάθηκες! Θα παραβείς τη διαταγή του Κρέοντα!
Με ποιο δικαίωμα θα με εμποδίσει αυτός από το χρέος μου?
Αντιγόνη, σύνελθε! Σκέψου πως ρήμαξε ατιμασμένος, από όλους μισημένος ο πατέρας. Μόνος του έβγαλε τα φρικτά σκοτάδια του στο φως. Μόνος του, με τα χέρια του τα δυο του μάτια σπάραξε. Και η μάνα μας, μάνα και σύζυγός του διπλός ο τίτλος, με μια θηλιά έβαλε τέλος στη ζωή της. Τα αδέλφια μας αντίπαλοι σφάχτηκαν για έναν θρόνο, μοιράστηκαν το θάνατο. Μείναμε ολομόναχες. Σκέψου ποιο τέλος τραγικό μας περιμένει αν αγνοήσουμε τη διαταγή του Κρέοντα, αν περιφρονήσουμε την εντολή του, την ίδια του την εξουσία. Κατάλαβε το. Γεννηθήκαμε γυναίκες. Δεν έχουμε τη δύναμη να πολεμήσουμε τους άνδρες. Και σε αυτό θα υποταχθούμε και σε άλλα χειρότερα. Εγώ, κι ας με συγχωρέσουν οι νεκροί, θα υπακούσω σε αυτούς που μας εξουσιάζουν η βία. Με αναγκάζει. Άσκοπο να τολμάς πράξεις που ξεπερνούν τη δύναμη σου.
Άσκοπο να πασχίσω να σου αλλάξω γνώμη. Τώρα και να θέλες, δεν θέλω εγώ να σε έχω σύμμαχό μου. Κράτα τη γνώμη σου. Εγώ τον αδελφό μου θα τον θάψω. Τον αδελφό μου θα τον θάψω. Θα είναι ευλογία να πεθάνω γι' αυτό. Αγαπημένη, θα ησυχάζω πλάι σε αγαπημένο και θα έχω κάνει έγκλημα ιερό. Προτιμώ να έχω την αγάπη των νεκρών μου παρά να είμαι αρεστή σε εσάς εδώ. Μικρή η ζωή για να υποταχτώ σε μια αδιανόητη εντολή. Τώρα αν εσύ πιστεύεις ότι ο Κρέον είναι πάνω από νόμο και Θεό δικαίωμά σου.
Τίποτε δεν πιστεύω. Όμως δεν βρίσκω μέσα μου τη δύναμη να εναντιωθώ στην πολιτεία.
Αυτό να προφασίζεσαι. Πηγαίνω να φτιάξω με τα χέρια μου τον τάφο του λατρεμένου μου αδελφού.
Άλλη μόνο, τρέμω για σένα.
Για μένα μη φοβάσαι. Κοίταξε εσύ πώς θα σωθείς.
Φυλάξου. Μην πεις κουβέντα σε κανέναν για αυτό που πας να κάνεις. Κι εγώ δεν θα μιλήσω. Στα κρυφά.
Μα όχι! Φώναξε το! Διαλάλησέ το! Πιο μισήτη θα μου είσαι αν σοπάσεις.
Έχει ζεστή καρδιά για πράγματα που σου παγώνουν το αίμα.
Ναι, για να τιμήσω αυτούς που πρέπει.
Αν θα μπορέσεις! Γιατί εσύ υποθείς αυτό που δεν μπορείς.
Όταν δεν θα μπορώ θα έχω πεθάνει.
Δεν θα πρέπει να κυνηγάς το ανέφικτο.
Μη συνεχίζεις με αυτά που λες. Και εγώ θα σε μισήσω. Και ο νεκρός δίκαια θα σε αποστρέφεται όταν θα πας κοντά του. Άσε με εμένα, την ανόητη, να πεθάνω για αυτά που αγαπώ. Τίποτε τόσο τρομερό δεν πρόκειται να πάθω, που να μην είναι ωραίος ο θάνατός μου.
Πήγαινε, πορεύεσαι ασυλλόγιστα, αλλά με την αγάπη εκείνον που αγαπάς.
Θρήνη και μυρολόγια, αν ξόρκιζαν το θάνατο, κανένας δεν θα σταματούσε να θρηνεί. Πάρτε την από εδώ, χτίστε την όπως διέταξα. Αφήστε την εκεί στην ερημιά, μονάχη. Αν θέλει ας πεθάνει, αν θέλει ας μείνει ζωντανή στον τάφο. Για σένα δεν υπάρχει γυρισμό στον πάνω κόσμο.
Τάφε, κάμαρα νηφική, βαθιά σκαμμένη, αιώνια φυλακή μου. Έρχομαι να συναντήσω τους δικούς μου στον κόσμο των νεκρών, εκεί όπου τόσους και τόσους από τη γενιά μου έχει δεχτεί η Περσεφόνη. Και τελευταία εγώ, πιο άθλια από όλους, κατεβαίνω προτού τελειώσει ο χρόνος της ζωής μου. Μα έχω ελπίδα αληθινή πως όταν φτάσω θα με δεχτεί ο πατέρας μου με αγάπη και εσύ με αγάπη, μάνα! Και εσύ με αγάπη, λατρεμένε μου αδελφέ, γιατί νεκρούς εγώ σας έλουσα, σας τόλισα, καλέ μου Πολυνίκη. Το άψυχο κορμί σου φρόντισα και να η ανταμοιβή μου. Όμως όσοι έχουν κρίση θα πούν πως δίκαια σε τίμησα, γιατί ποτέ, ούτε για τα παιδιά μου, ούτε και για τον άντρα μου τέτοιο βάρος δεν θα σήκωνα ενάντια στην απόφαση. Σε ποιο νόμο λοιπόν υπακούω? Αν πέθανε ο άντρας μου, άλλον άντρα θα μπορούσα να πάρω και παιδί από άλλον άντρα θα μπορούσα να αποκτήσω. Μα τώρα που μάνα και πατέρας έχουν χαθεί, αδελφός πια δεν γίνεται να γεννηθεί για μένα. Με τέτοιο νόμο εγώ σε τίμησα, ακριβέ μου. Κι ο Κρέον το θεώρησε έγκλημα, αμάρτημα ασυγχώρητο, στο θάνατο με σέρνει με τη βία, δίχως κρεβάτι να γνωρίσω νηφικό, δίχως τραγούδια και χαρές του γάμου να γευτώ. Παιδιά, στην αγκαλιά μου να αναστήσω, έρημη, δίχως φίλους, ζωντανή, κατεβαίνω στο μνήμα. Ποιο δίκαιο θεϊκό έχω παραβιάσει? Τι ωφελεί δύστιχη να σηκώνω το βλέμμα στους θεούς? Ποιον να φωνάξω σύμμαχο? Ευσέβεια έδειξα, κι όμως καταδικάστηκα για ασέβεια. Αν όλα αυτά τα εγκρίνουν οι θεοί, ας πάθω. Αν όμως το άδικο βαραίνει τους κριτές μου, χειρότερα! Χειρότερα μην πάθουν από το άδικο που έκαναν σε μένα.
Οι ίδιοι άγριοι άνεμοι δέρνουν ακόμα την ψυχή της. Γι' αυτό και θα τιμωρηθούν αυτοί που την πηγαίνουν. Καθυστερούν πολύ.
Αλίμονο τα λόγια αυτά ακούστηκαν πολύ κοντά στο θάνατο.
Ναι, μην ελπίζεις. Αυτό είναι το τέλος.
Πόλη μου, γη μου, πατρική, θεοί των προγόνων μου, κοιτάξτε, δείτε τι παθαίνω και από ποιους, γιατί σεβάστηκα. Πάρτε με γρήγορα από εδώ, πάρτε με μακριά, ας έρθει πια ο θάνατος.
So we see these two sins, and I have chosen a few words from the first sin and a few from the second to highlight them. And in the dialogue with Ismini, we see Ismini saying, "Are you crazy? Will you defy Creon's order?" And Antigone replies, "With what right is he going to stop me from my duty?" And Ismini insists, trying to change Antigone's mind, even saying, "Understand it. We were born women. We do not have the power to fight men. We will submit to this and even worse things as well." And Antigone, of course, says, "I will bury my brother. It will be a blessing to die for this. I will have committed a sacred crime. Life is too short to obey an unthinkable command. If you believe Creon is above law and God, that is your right." And in the meaning admits, "I don't find the strength inside me to stand against the state." And Antigone says, "When I will not be able to stand against, I will have died. Let me, the fool, die for what I love." And in her monologue, after Creon's final decision that she was going to be sent alive in the grave, she says, "Those who are wise will say that I honored you justly, because I would never, never want to carry this burden on my shoulders for my children and my husband." And she asks, "To which law, then, do I obey? If I lost my husband," and she explains in some ways that if I lost my husband, I could marry another man. And even if I lost my children, I could have another. But now that my mother and my father are dead, I can no longer have another brother. So whom should she wonders, whom should I call as an ally? Even gods seem to have forgotten her. Which divine law have I violated? I showed piety, and yet I was condemned for impiety. If all these are approved by the gods, let me suffer. But if not, maybe those who really cause my suffering should be punished, which it actually happens at the end of the play. And after Creon gets furious and says, "Why are you still not taking her and take her away?" She's calling on my land, my city, my ancestral home, gods of my forefathers. Look, see what I suffer and from whom, because I showed reverence. Take me away from here, quickly, take me far away. Let death come. Of course, to be able to stand up and to find the inner strength, as Ismeni was saying, I don't have the power inside me to stand against the state and to go against the orders of the king. We need courage. And I wrote a paper, which I presented at the first conference of the existential movement, about my favorite fairy tale, the Little Red Riding Hood. It is interesting because usually, you know, as children, our favorite fairy tale says something about us. This is what Jung says. And for me, Little Red Riding Hood was my favorite fairy tale. And because the theme of existential courage is something that has always been important for me, I thought, what an interesting coincidence. So I used this fairy tale to talk about existential courage, and then it was published in the Journal of Existential Analysis. And it is really an attempt to draw my attention to a discussion of existential courage and its relationship to a few other existential givens, such as freedom, authenticity, meaning, and finitude, in order to really highlight its importance. And the paper also explores the relationship of courage to will and love. Of course, Rollo May has written a whole book about will and love, and the possible connection of childhood experiences for the development of will and willpower. So that brings me to another article that I have written again in the existential analysis, in the Journal of Existential Analysis, where I'm talking about this existential developmental understanding. It is a model that I have been working on for quite a few years. Even when I was in graduate school, I was very impressed with developmental theories. And I started combining different developmental theories as well as other theories, and created this spiral that I called the DNA of the soul, to make a parallel between the biological DNA and the psychological DNA, all of our inheritance that comes from our environment and the way we are brought up and our relationships. And it was presented in 2002, 2003, something like that, in the Second World Congress of Psychotherapy in Vienna. And since then, I have been really working on this idea of how different developmental theories are really creating our being, how we become who we are really through our experiences. So in the beginning, of course, of life, we know now, even from neuropsychological findings, that a secure bond with mother, with caretaker, gives us this trusting and security relations that is very important for feeling safe. And these feelings of trust and security really provide a greater opening for the development of a sense of autonomy. And of course, Erickson discusses, is one of the developmental theories that I have used together with Bowlby and the attachment theory and so on. And then he talks about the development of the virtue of will in the second stage, when the infant really becomes more autonomous and more independent. So these feelings of autonomy and independence can really be cultivated from very early on. And the first most important element that I mentioned is this feeling of security that is created by the bond with a mother that is present and is consistently caring for the child in this stability, which is very interesting for me, and that's why I connected it with psychotherapy, with what we're talking about as the background for psychotherapy, and the creationship of the relationship with our client and the environment of trust and stability that is very important. And of course, our presence is what creates this sense of safe space where somebody can really open up themselves to the world and explore more about who they are, and hopefully, as I will discuss later, to really come to terms with who they are. So differently, feelings of shame and doubt, and I would also add fear, hinder the development of freedom, and feeling insufficient and incapable of making choices and standing out there in the world make human beings more subservient, more submissive, and more docile, and do not allow for this kind of stance that we see in Antigone, where she's, it's not that she's not afraid, and courage is not really the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite our fear. So I very much believe that willpower can be exercised, and we can help children from very early on by giving them the space to make their own choices and to slowly, take more and more responsibility of their life, to really stand up for themselves and for who they are and what they believe. And similarly, we can also help our clients by this kind of approval and sort of unconditional positive regard of Rogers in some ways, to really, and of course, the very important existential element of giving them the responsibility for their life and helping them, as Jan says, to take charge of their life and to be the ones that are making their own choices, so that it's not a therapist that is going to say to the client what they're going to do, but is going to support them to find their own answers, of course. So in this way, we are really increasing their freedom, because we're also helping them to increase their willpower and their willingness to face adversity. And of course, as we all know, when a client starts to change, the family and the system will react and will try to bring them back to the previous status quo. And so it requires a certain stamina and a real belief in what one is trying to do, to persist with whatever change he or she wants to do. I actually thought of also sharing this little saying from Thukydides, who was writing at about the same time as Antigone and the Sophocles play. And he writes, The secret to happiness is freedom. And the secret to freedom is courage. So, as a young girl, as I said, my greatest wish was to be free. And to be able to write my own history and to not be determined by my inheritance. And this is why I moved to the United States, and I studied there, and I tried to become myself, thinking exactly that, I can separate what is mine and what is not mine, which of course is not something that can really happen, because we are all of our experiences, and everything that has really happened to us in some ways has created who we are today. So as a more mature woman, I realized that what is most important is to make peace with our inheritance, and to find the strength to face up to all the difficulties and challenges that life brings. Of course, finding strength and courage is very much related to meaning and to love. If we don't have meaning in life, and I believe that if we don't have love, as you will see at the end, I don't think that a lot of things matter. So these are very important ingredients for the development of inner strength and the ability to face up to life and to life's difficulties. And this in some ways brings me to another topic, which was the theme of my presentation at the previous conference, at the Third World Congress in Athens, that I called authentic historicalness, making our history our own, which was recently published in the journal Existential. And the title was, of course, inspired by the work of Martin Heidegger and his concept of authentic historicalness, as it is presented in an article by Thomas Sheehan and Corinna Painter. As I said, my biggest desire as a teenager was to be free and to leave my family and to search for myself and all of that. And one of the reasons why I started combining all of the developmental theories was in my effort to understand myself and where I come from and what role my parents played and my upbringing and all of my inheritance. But I was always stuck with this question of the paradox between thrones and freedom. And it has really troubled me for many years. How can we claim that we are free and responsible for our life, since so much of our conditions are really not of our own choosing, and we're thrown in this world with so many givens that, for some time, I also played around with the idea of reincarnation, and maybe everything is a choice, and we really choose the body that we are reincarnated in, and we choose the family in which we are born, and so on and so forth. That gave me a sense of, that explains maybe, and makes us really responsible for everything, and everything is a choice. But still, my Western mind was very more difficult to sort of settle with that, and because I also believe in chance, and that I see that so many things happen that pure luck. And so I was struggling with this question. And of course, I liked also the idea of Viktor Frankl, and I do believe very much so that you are thrown into a condition and still you are responsible for the way you're going to reply to the condition and how you're going to stand. But still, is this reaction, is this stance really your own, or is it something that you have learned and is not really authentic, but it is an inherited thing that comes from, as we see from neuropsychology, or an automatic reaction to something. So the idea that our freedom lies in our ability to choose our fate by embracing our history and making it our own seemed to really be somewhat of an answer to my question and my quest for an answer. So I'm sort of more at peace with the idea that, yes, everything is part of me. And I am who I am because of everything that I have inherited and everything that has happened to me. And this is what I see in my work with clients, that actually this is where they end up as well, that, yeah, this was who my mother was, and I need to make peace with that. And of course, who my mother was and what are my childhood experiences is who I am. So we come very much to also Nietzsche's idea of be who you are, and of amor fati, and you have to love your fate in this kind of way, not in the way of just surrendering, but in a very active way of having ownership of your fate and your inheritance, and say, yes, this is what happened, and this is who I am. And if these things had not happened, I would probably not be the same person, for better or for worse. And for some things it's better, and for some things it's worse. Okay, so this has been my most recent sort of thought about freedom and our responsibility, and of course of psychotherapy, and what psychotherapy can help us with. And I think providing a safe space in which somebody, in the presence of another being, can unravel their history and really see and experience in an embodied way, experience their history and what has happened to them. Because as you probably all know, in the beginning, people come in and tell you their story, but in a very distanced kind of way, not in a way where they are really making contact with the feelings and with what it really meant, how it really felt to be in that position. So I think that the importance of the therapist's presence and this feeling of security, that this person is there for me in an uncritical and judgmental kind of way, really helps us to slowly get in touch, not only with the story, but with the feelings behind the story, with the felt sense, as Gentle would say, and to really make peace with the pain and the sorrow and all of the losses and all of the difficulties that have really brought us to where we are. And this slowly gives us the power again in our hands to really be ourselves and to make our own choices and to be Antigone, who stands up for what she believes is her duty and what is right to do, even though, you know, she knows that this means death. Right? And I want to leave you with just a few wise words from Lao Tzu. Because, as I said, I think probably the essence of all of that is love. So, and Lao Tzu says that being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. In some ways, we are all capable of being an Antigone and of really standing up towards authority and finding inner strength to really do what we consider is important, especially when what we consider is important is out of our heart and it's something that we really believe and we really love.